You have to realize Mozambique was a communist country before, and with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, then they became democratic. In quotes, I'm doing my air quotes here, democratic. So there are elections, but in Africa, there's the saying that's like, it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts.
Oh,
so
interesting.
See that.
Right.
Scott was teaching on the Ten Commandments, and I just remember being so shocked because they would come forward at the end of the service, and they were like, what? Maybe it was do not lie. They were like, we didn't know.
I mean, everybody would come forward and say, kneel down and say, let me
how do you not know
pray.
that? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it was
We've never heard this before.
Boy, I know my Catholic side. Today's guests are Lisa and Scott Harris, missionaries to South Africa for decades, and are part of the African Outreach Ministries. Lisa is also a book author. She's published over 40 books. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to the Newdayministriy Podcast. I'm your host, Sean McKinnon, and today's guests are Scott and Lisa Harris. So would you please introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Scott Harris. I'm a missionary to Mozambique, targeting the Tonga people of Mozambique, and I'm also the acting president of African Outreach Ministries.
And I'm Lisa Harris, Scott's wife, mother to 3, missionary, caregiver, and author.
All right, yeah. Right, my wife's delving through your books right now. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I started perusing that one. It's so good. It's great. And we'll put some links in the show notes for everybody out there listening. I recommended your books already on Facebook and stuff.
Yes, thank you.
And definitely do it through the podcast show. And let's just start with the beginning, because most of the listeners probably don't know who you guys are. And I'd like to call you guys a Christian power couple.
Okay, that's cool.
I'm flexing for everybody out there. So, Scott and Lisa are power couple. When it comes to everything going on with the work of the Spirit here, is they're doing missionary work, they're authoring things, they're speaking. You guys probably had to raise funds through the years, right? And all that kind of stuff. So, it's been probably a big experience overall for you guys and your kids, I'm sure, considering where you guys started and where you guys are at right now. So, we're going to back it up a little bit to where you guys are from. So, Scott, you said you're from Denver, Colorado, or what kind of area are you from?
Well, I was born in Denver, but I was adopted, so I didn't stay much time there. I was born in Denver, but I grew up in Grand Junction, Colorado, the other side of the Rockies.
Awesome. You like all the mountains and the
I love the mountains. When I go back, I go, I noticed that on your cap when you're right. It's like,
for all you guys that know me out there, I wear my Colorado caps all the time.
Yeah.
So you love the mountains too, right?
Yes.
Do you like skiing or hiking or anything like that?
I love skiing.
Wow.
I haven't skied, though, for years. I'd probably die now and break a leg or something. But yeah, I love to ski.
Moguls and stuff.
Yep, black diamonds, everything.
Yeah. Oh, geez. I hike. We don't ski, even though my wife are from New York State and there's mountains in Vermont and everything.
I don't ski either.
I don't really ski. Lisa's shaking her head. So.
I tried to get her, but yeah.
I tried the French Alps one time, and it was a disaster.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, it was so bad.
Mount Ajax, which is Aspen, right, is basically all the Scandinavian people, actually the Eastern Austrian people that came over there, kind of reminded them of the Alps and everything, so they loved that area as they settled it, right? But we like to hike, my wife and I, so we're not skiers yet. But I do like the style of skiing, and I always want to get up on the mountaintop with a camera when everything's rocking and rolling on a sunny, snowy day, because I bet you there'd be some cool pictures and everything going on up there, So,
I would take pictures if I could just leave it at that.
And then hang out back at the base camp, right?
With hot chocolate.
Yeah, have some. Yeah. So, all right. So, Lisa, where do you hail from?
The Pacific Northwest. Grew up in Washington State.
Great. What area?
Right across from Portland, Oregon, in Vancouver.
I've never been there, but
it is beautiful. Views of Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens.
Ooh.
Yeah, not too far from the beach.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a guitar guy, as you guys know, right?
Yeah.
And so some of my favorite guitars, the wood that they use, the luthiers and stuff, that handmade guitars, actually come from up in that area of the woods. So I know a guy in town, he went up there and actually handpicked out his guitar, and about $15,000 later, he got a really nice guitar.
Wow.
But the wood that I heard, the wood up there is really neat. So.
There's a different smell, even just this woodsy outdoor.
Kind of like pine.
So both of you guys kind of have that, I like the aspen trees, actually.
Oh, I love aspens.
Oh, yeah.
Planted them in Broken Arrow in their backyard. They're still there, the family that bought them.
Oh, really?
They're still there. Yep. And but I had my sprinkler system adjusted for it and everything. But anyway, but you guys come from like the mountainous kind of areas and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about compared to where you guys grew up to where you guys did missionary work. Nevertheless, Tulsa, maybe that landscape, maybe there's something there. But anyways, so Scott, you said you were adopted, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you somehow got in touch with your birth mother and everything, and
Yeah, about 7 years ago, probably.
Wow.
I requested my records. Kind of a long story, which I won't bore anybody. But my sister, I have a sister that's adopted as well, and she thought she had found her family. And anyway, that's put her on a quest. And she goes, Scott, I've got all the information. You just need to fill out this form and send this in, and they will release your records.
Wow.
So I did that and found out that my birth mother was living in Abilene, Texas, where my daughter is right now, about 5 miles from where my daughter is. And actually, we took some courses preparing for mission work, a couple summer courses in a special program there, and just down the street. Who knows? We may have passed each other in
It's weird.
in Walmart or something.
that's
and never
crazy.
knew it.
Crazy cool, man. That's great. And you said your birth father maybe passed away recently? Or
Yeah,
something?
we did the genetic thing for my daughter. She wanted to know. We have 2 adopted children as well, and so she kind of wanted to do that. So we did it as a family, and I found out I have 2 other sisters,
Wow.
and I have not met them in person yet. Hoping to do that, Lord willing, this May. And found out my father had passed away probably 2 years before I found them. But yeah, so
And
it
he
was
was
kind of nice to
still
know.
in Colorado, right? You
Yeah, he stayed the whole time in Colorado.
Gee whiz. Now, Lisa, your background, so you're raised by a single mom or something, you said?
Yeah, quite a few years as a single mom, and then she remarried, but stayed in Vancouver that whole time.
Okay,
Yeah.
same schools, all
Yes,
that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
didn't get transplanted or
no,
anything.
which is
Okay.
kind of nice. Yeah.
Wow.
She actually taught at a Christian school, so I went to Columbia Christian up there in
Okay.
Portland.
Nice. Was that a Church of Christ type of thing?
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah, I grew up Catholic, so I went to the Catholic grade schools
Yeah.
eventually, Catholic high schools for a few years until my parents couldn't afford it anymore, and then ended up in public school meeting my wife, so that was good. But so you stayed in like the high school too? Was that
Yeah,
or was it-
junior high and high
Okay.
school.
Oh wow, all the way through. Okay, so now eventually some of the listeners are probably wondering how you guys got together, like because we got Colorado, we got the Northwest. Okay, so we're gonna connect some dots here, right? So Scott, where did you end up going to college at then?
Well, when I graduated, I went to York College in York, Nebraska for 2 years. It was a junior college at the time, junior Christian college. And I went because they had a program called the Master's Apprentice Program, the MAP program for short. And I ended up going on a 2-year internship to Lyon, France. And so I did 2 years at York, then 2 years in France. And then I chose to go to Harding because I had family connections there. My grandparents actually retired there. And they said, we're going to be here, and if grandkids want to come here to this university, then we'll be with them. And I had not lived by my grandparents. So I thought, this is my chance. And so I went there, and that's where I met my wife.
And where is Harding University for?
It's in Searcy, Arkansas.
In Arkansas.
So, yeah.
All right. So you ended up there then. So Lisa, how'd you get there?
My mother had actually got her master's there, and I wanted an adventure somewhere, far away, and so I headed down to Arkansas.
It's a little different than the Northwest,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
just a little.
So little did you know, right? Because you go there and the culture is a little different than the
Yeah,
Northwest, but eventually
definitely.
you'd be going to other places where the culture is totally different.
Very different,
so,
yeah.
Not, as strange as probably Arkansas felt, God had other things in store for you
Yeah,
eventually, we'll get
yeah.
into, right? So,
Yeah.
so you moved to a totally different place, which is interesting because a lot of people in New York State, where I'm from, end up in the SUNY system, which is the state of New York, universities of New York.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up going from Buffalo to Syracuse. Oh, I moved out of town. Basically kind of the same. And it's like going to Stillwater here, if you're
Right.
from Tulsa. I mean, it's
Right.
not really the same. But you went from somewhere that's probably a little different than,
It was different, actually,
Yeah.
being down in the South.
like
Yeah.
the way they talk and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're kind of higher pitched sometimes in Arkansas when they talk, right?
Yep.
Nasally, right? A little bit. I'm just
Hog
guessing.
calls and
Yeah, yeah.
Hatsui, and yeah.
Yeah, well, when I was in the military, I ended up going to Georgia and stuff for infantry training, airborne school and
Yeah,
all that, and,
yeah.
and then go down to Alabama and stuff, and they have peanut festivals and stuff. So that was a
Yeah,
little different. It was weird for me. Then I ended up in Central America later, but just like you guys, you end up in a whole totally another country,
Right.
a third world country and all that. So I'm using air quotes for you out there, but you really start to delve into what's different, right?
right.
So okay, so you guys are in college. How'd you guys meet though?
We went to a Bible mixer. We both were dual majors at school, Bible and French for myself, and she did Bible and Consumer and Health Sciences.
Nice.
Which was home ec back then, but now they got a fancy name. Probably to go with the price that we had to pay to get that paper.
We won't go there.
Anyway, I went to this mixers at one of the Bible professors' houses. They split everybody up, and we were in the same group. And they went around to introduce everybody. You introduced yourself, and she was across the room. I know where she was sitting, and she kind of caught my eye. Okay. And then I got around and told about myself and my interest for French-speaking Africa, and her roommate tells the story. Lisa doesn't remember this, but her roommate says she came back from that mixer that night and said, "I've found the guy I'm going to marry."
Ooh.
So,
because he had this French accent, that was why.
French. Can you do the French accent?
no, I didn't know I was doing it.
He had just come back from living in France for 2 years. So
It's kind of like me when I go to the grocery store the other day, or no, the dollar store actually, and some lady behind me goes, "Where are you from?" She's like, I can't do her Oklahoma accent. I'm like, from Buffalo, Niagara Falls, New York. I can tell. So I'm like, okay, right? So you had a little bit of that French.
The intonation was off because I've been speaking French for 2 years.
Cool. All right, so you guys get together there, right? How long did it take before you guys were married?
less than 2 years. That was like in October, and then we got married July.
Year and a half
Year
later,
and a half,
almost 2
yeah.
years later then?
Yeah.
Nice, okay. And that was still while you're in school, right?
We were still in school. Yeah.
Okay. It can be done, right?
Yeah.
Can be done, yeah.
We did it.
We tried to explain to our parents, we're going to save money.
They
We're
weren't
not gonna-
necessarily thrilled, but
Now, there was a thing when I was at Oral Roberts University. I was older, married, kids and all stuff, a non-traditional student, right? But there was a thing called Ring by Spring. So the girls were looking to get engaged by the end of their spring. So I don't know if that was a thing where you guys are in college, but anywho, probably showing our age, but nodding our heads. Other young kids, I just lost them. They're like, I ain't listening to this.
Yeah.
But anywho, so you guys are there, right? And so your callings individually seem to have been based more around missionary work. So whoever wants to talk about that, like individually.
Well, I'll start. As far as I can remember, I always wanted to be a missionary to Africa. If you asked me as a little kid, what are you going to do? My grandparents were missionaries to South Africa starting in 1970. They spent like 4 or 5 years there. My aunt and uncle, my mom's youngest sister, and her husband moved to Zambia in 1969.
Wow.
Plus then my mom's oldest sister, when her husband left the family, she went with my cousins, and my cousin was my best friend at the time, moved to South Africa to live with my grandparents. So it's like, that's where my family was. And I remember my grandparents would send me, actually, I know what it is now. It was their school uniforms. So I had the same school uniform that my cousin had. But I called it my safari suit. So when it was show and tell, it's like, I'm going to wear my safari suit to school. Mom's going, are you sure?
I'm going to wear it. I could hear a teacher being like, well, I don't know if I should allow this.
Yeah. So I wore my safari suit, even though it was just the school uniform, and said, I'm going to be a missionary to Africa.
Wow, that's great. So all these people in your family have been, going to Africa now for a long time, for decades and generations.
Decades.
Wow.
There's a little road through the middle of Zambia, a dirt road. It's one day going to be a paved road, they say. That 4 generations of my family have been on that same
road, because it's so bumpy.
Yeah.
It's sand. It throws you into the bushes.
You mean like when people around here complain about the roads here?
This is nothing.
I roll my eyes.
I've been on the roads that go right through jungles, and it's like less than 1 lane, and there's 50 of us troops on this big 2.5 truck, this big diesel truck, and then you see another truck coming at you, and there's jungles hitting the trucks, and you know what I mean, right? I bet, people complain about the roads here in America, and I'm like,
No, they're great.
No, I don't remember how many kilometers this road is. It's long, like maybe 4 hours.
Yeah, it's long.
And we count how many other cars we pass, which is like maybe 2.
Wow.
Maybe.
That's something. That's really cool. Now, Lisa, when you were younger, you just kind of felt like some collective calling of maybe missionary work.
Yeah, I don't remember any one moment. I just knew that God was calling me to Africa, and even to French-speaking Africa, which I don't know why, but You know,
We
it's
know why
interesting
now,
because,
but-
and even like our son has felt a calling, and it didn't come from us, you know, and it was kind of like Samuel in the Bible, you know, where God kind of called him, and you just kind of have to listen. And so then when I heard this French accent, I thought,
That's my ticket.
He might be the one.
That's the one. I love it. So now you're in school, you're finishing up some degrees at school, right? Now you're eventually going off for some, you got married, now you're eventually going off for some training, right? Is that what happened next? Did you go
Yeah, we did a couple of years. Well, he did a year of grad school. We did a year of training in the inner city of St. Louis.
Wow.
With a team that we eventually went over to West Africa.
And this is all Church of Christ, right? At the time? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing some training, probably learned a lot then, right? Newlyweds, you know, hashing it out, right? Learning what it's like to be out and about and living the faith, right? Together as a couple, which is different, right?
Yeah.
It's different than being out on your own or with your buddies doing it. Now you guys are together doing it. So eventually you end up where then? Overseas?
We ended up in Togo, West Africa, little teeny country there, working with the Wachi people group. So
for the listeners out there, you said that don't know their geography of Africa being a continent.
Being a continent, yes.
Not a country. So West Africa, where were you talking? Like
on the big part that's the top before it loops down.
Yeah.
And Togo is sandwiched between Ghana and Nigeria.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Nigeria is kind of there on the little armpit part. And then it goes Benin, another small country, but bigger than Togo, and then Togo, and then Ghana.
And these all mostly French-speaking countries, or a mix of all?
The two that were sandwiched in between are English.
Okay.
So Ghana and Nigeria are English. Togo and Benin are French.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so cool. You know the joke, I've said it before, like, what do you call a person who speaks one language? An American.
An American, yeah.
It's like terrible, right? We're terrible here.
It's true.
True, though.
It is so true. When I was in Central America, I knew a little Spanish, and it helped living in there and wanting to learn it and getting better at it. But, like, you know, they even speak, like, close to... You get closer to Colombia, closer to Brazil, they start speaking Portuguese, right, and stuff. So you get those people in Panama even that can speak Portuguese. Whatever the native tongue was there for the Kunas is cool. So you guys probably experienced a lot of that then, right? Because I had a friend from the Congo back in Buffalo years ago, and he was a translator. He's earning money going to college as a translator for the hospitals and refugees and stuff.
Yeah.
And he could speak 16 languages, but fluently 4 or 5, but you know, I mean,
because there's a lot of the local languages, and they're all kind of tied together, but not, you know, but separate.
Yeah.
So because we had to go and learn a local language.
We spoke Ewe, but technically we spoke Wachi. That's our dialect, but we'd had to do Ewe is what we learned because that's what the written language was in. So the Bible was in Ewe and then Wachi.
But it's
so
all
Lisa
similar.
It's so similar, just a few words and maybe accent, how you say a few things, just small changes. And so she would have to translate for the children from Ewe, because the problem was the Bible was 100 years old, so it's not even like modern Ewe. It was like King James Ewe.
Sure.
So she'd have to translate it for the children. We'd say this is what the Bible says, and then she would have to put it kind of in the local dialect so the kids could understand.
That makes sense.
But people could quickly learn to understand. It just came with experience because vocabulary.
That's really interesting now, because you're an author, so words are kind of important to you, right? I mean, when you're an author, you want to convey a certain feeling, you want to convey certain emotions, you want to set up a certain part of the story a certain way, or whatever.
I do love words.
Words and how they work together.
He's gifted in languages. Me, not so much.
But you're an author, and it's well written. I've read some of the stuff already, so maybe you're better at writing and taking the time to process it and get it out. And he's maybe better at just.
I'm good with English.
She's good with English, just not with the other languages.
Not the other. All right, fair enough. Okay. So all right, so at that point now you're Togo, right? So what type of years or what year are we talking about? Time frame.
94 to 97.
Okay. So there are a few years now. When did you start adopting? You adopted first, right? So when did you
we came back and adopted.
It actually went very fast.
Yeah.
Within 6 months.
Oh.
Or less. We
Really?
had a
After Togo, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Came here, okay.
Well,
We
we
had
came
a-
back and adopted, and then the judge kind of said, until it's finalized, you need to stay here. And we felt like
It
we'd
took,
already
it
been
did
out
take quite a
6
while
months.
before everybody signed
Where
off.
was here?
We were in
We were staying
Texas.
no, we were staying in Colorado. No, it was half
Yeah.
Colorado, half Texas.
Well, we got him from Colorado, and then we went to Texas.
Yeah.
Because he
Okay.
got a job at a.
All right. So I know it's not easy adopting. So, I mean, the process is, I've heard, is kind of difficult. So you guys had an easy time with it, or is it?
Well,
I mean,
it happened very fast, but it was emotional because here you have it's kind of like before everything is signed off, which took at least 6 months. You're kind of foster parents.
right.
In other words, knowing that you could have to give the child back, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen.
You're keeping this child. Now, who was this child? Who was the first one?
Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Now, we were chosen very quickly. We had to do all of our home studies and everything in Togo.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I actually translated it into English.
Yeah.
They didn't require an official they just said, we need to know what it says. Okay, here's
Yeah.
the French and here's the English. You can see it's the same.
Right.
And we got selected very quickly. And then actually when the baby was born,
They wanted us to be there.
they wanted us to be
but
there.
Then she changed her
Where
mind.
was the baby born?
in
in
West
the East
Virginia.
Coast somewhere.
I think in
yeah.
Virginia. I don't know, someplace. The agency said, no, we don't recommend that, which was good because
She changed
as soon
her
as it was
mind, yeah.
born, the family
That was
changed
kinda
their mind.
traumatic.
So that was traumatic.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were getting over that, and then the agency said, well, we're getting ready to go back or whatever. They said, well, there's another baby that you've been selected, but because of what you went through, we haven't told you.
Yeah.
We're waiting to see until things, and it's like due next week.
Wow.
And we go, oh, well, okay. And so, and that was Gabriel.
So we got him at 10 days old.
Wow, 10 days old.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when did you adopt your second child?
2 years later.
The same process?
And that happened actually very quickly, too.
In what area was it? Still in the...
That was in Texas because we had moved
Yeah.
to Texas when we got Gabriel.
That's amazing.
And that happened very fast, too.
Again.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I was actually there when she was born,
In the room.
in the room with her.
No way.
Yeah, which again was difficult because I had to go in there with the mindset that this is not my child because
Right.
she still had to sign.
She had
every
3
papers.
days.
Correct. I've
So-
seen movies where they don't sign it and stuff. I've
Yeah.
seen like movies on that.
So I had to go in there because she wanted me to be there, and I had to be supportive, but not think this is my child. So it was,
So, yeah.
it was kind of difficult, but
But you know what? Actually, it was another blessing.
Yeah.
Mariah, when she was born, went into ICU and spent
Yeah.
the 3 days that she was in the
In the
hospital
NICU,
in
yeah.
ICU.
Mhm.
So she wasn't in the room with the mother, which I think helped.
probably made it easier.
Made it
Yeah.
easier, and we could and you could only visit so many at a time, so it's not like we were there with the mother. And we had to tell the agency, it's like, please explain to the mother. It's not that we're not
Right.
excited, but we have to protect ourselves
Correct.
in case this doesn't go through. We've been there, done that, and that's very
So
painful. So
adoption can be very emotional, yeah,
Right,
for sure.
correct. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I've known people in my family that have done it and stuff, so I understand.
In fact, we decided we weren't going to do it again
Right.
because it was just so emotional, and we weren't going to have any more
after
children.
you adopted the second one, you guys now decided that's enough.
That's enough. And
Right.
then we had a surprise.
About how long after that?
2 years.
I was gonna guess 2 years. I was gonna go out on a limb and say
Yeah.
2 years.
So they're like 2 years. 2 years apart.
That's pretty funny. So your third child is who?
Jaden.
Okay.
Yeah.
God bless. All right, and you're back in America at this time.
yes,
Yeah.
So how long did you stay in America?
7 years.
7 years, yeah.
Okay, and back in the Colorado area?
No, we were in Texas.
Tejas? What part?
Dallas.
Dallas, Fort Worth, Dallas.
Yep.
Boom, boom.
So we kind of became Texans.
Cue the Dallas music. But anyway, so you're down in Texas. All right, so eventually you're raising your kids, right? Were you guys doing ministry work? Were you doing educator work?
I was working in a alternative high school as a principal, assistant principal, then principal, but alternative high school.
That's some stuff there.
So,
Yeah.
There's a calling right there, brother.
and I loved it. I mean, it was good.
And so raising the kids, now they get to a certain point. Now, is God stirring your hearts to do
Yeah.
something? Was it kind of a surprise, or did you just kind of know? as
We
it
we always
grew
knew
up?
we were going to go back.
Oh, okay. So you didn't know. All right. So,
Just kind of waiting. In fact, before Jaden was born, we had thought we would go to Japan.
really?
we went to Japan, visited, because we were really serious about joining some friends, but God shut every single door, just very, very clearly. And so we decided, okay, I guess it's not Japan, so what are we going to do? And so we just kept thinking about it and praying about it, and then he miraculously told us where to go.
There was a mission Sunday at our church that we were attending there in Dallas, and the focus was on Russia and the Eastern Bloc countries like Lithuania and I don't know, whatever those Baltic states are up there. No, not that far over.
Oh, not that far.
Yeah, up near Finland the Baltic states.
Okay, gotcha.
And so on the way home, Lisa goes, well, what do you think of the lesson? And I said, well, I was really challenged and, would love to go back, as we've said, to do mission work. And she goes, well, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I'll go anywhere. Right. My first choice would be back to Africa. What about you? She said, oh, the same. And I said, well, we learned Russian. We learned French and Eve. We can learn Russian as well. Mm-hmm. She said, yeah, but Africa is our first choice. Then Lisa goes, well, have you thought about where you'd want to go? And I said, well, maybe we could go back to Togo. We already kind of spoke the languages before and everything. And she said, you know what? That was so hard back then. And now with 3 small children, I can't do it. And plus the team would have, we stepped out a long time ago. That's where our memories and history stopped. They've advanced, new people have joined. It's not the same team. It's not the same. Nothing will be the same, and it might be very difficult to go back into that situation.
Mm-hmm. So you were part of a certain group at that years ago. Now you're just kind of sounds like I'm sensing a shift to a different group. Maybe.
Well, yeah, and so she goes, well, what about going with your aunt and uncle? They've always said, if you're ever interested in coming back to Africa, talk to us.
Yeah.
And they were the founders of African Outreach Ministries, living in Zimbabwe at the time. After the Rhodesia War, they moved there for my cousins to attend schools instead of living out in the bush where they did in Zambia. And so I said, well, it's easy to invite somebody. It's easy to say, why don't you come and join us? I mean, we even do that sometimes. Why don't you come and visit? Why don't you think about it? And I said, I need an invitation.
Right.
I need something that says, we're officially inviting you. And then that was the end of our conversation. And then I remember I said, well, I've got to go. It's Sunday, and I've got to get some stuff for my school. So I'm going to go to Sam's and pick up some supplies. And I took one of the kids with me. I don't even remember which one, but they're in the back seat, I know. I put them in the car seat, and I'm driving to Sam's, and then I'm maybe a mile away, and Lisa calls me on the cell phone, and she's crying, and I thought somebody had died.
Oh, geez.
And I said, what's the matter? What happened? And she said, well, I decided to check email when you left.
Dial-up email.
Yeah.
Dial-up?
The dial-up, yeah.
Where you could, start it, go to dinner, come back.
And she said, there's a letter from your aunt and uncle in Zimbabwe saying, if we've invited you, if you ever want to come back to Africa, to consider, coming and working with us, and we're officially inviting you to come and visit this summer if you're interested.
They use the same words.
The same words.
Wow.
And she goes, well, what do I say? And I said, tell them, yes, we'll come.
Right.
Because I can't stand there in front of God and say, I need an official invitation saying I'm officially inviting you. And 30 minutes later, it shows up. I mean, that meant that they were typing the message as we're saying that. And so it's really a God thing.
That's so cool. So you threw the fleece out there.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing I was putting the fleece out there.
You just kind of were tidying up the house and threw the fleece out there. And sure enough, it's wetter, right? So it's time to go. So how long after that did you guys take before you...
That was probably January, February. We went that summer.
We went that summer in June and moved there in January.
Wow.
No, a year and a half.
Do you think it was a year and a half later? I don't know after that. Oh, yes, because Jaden was, when we went to go visit, Jaden was like 11 months old.
Yeah,
and
we actually took him. We took him with us. Yeah, so he was little.
Yeah, we left our other 2 children here in the States. I don't even know with who. Do you know who we left them with? Anyway, I don't remember who we left. We just left our kids. Maybe we left them at home.
You went to church one day, checked them into children's church,
and just
then went to
back.
Africa for a little bit.
We're back.
That we don't remember.
I don't know who we left our kids with, but Jaden was still nursing and was small, and Lisa says I have to bring him. So Jaden went to Africa for the first time in about
now you've been traveling
7 months or something.
recently. like recently. So compare it right now to the current situation traveling. You might have thought it was hard back then, but was it actually easier for customs?
Oh, yeah, no, it's easier now.
It's
It was
easier now?
easier back then.
Back then, okay, yeah.
It's harder now because you have to.
Yeah.
It's not just the pain of wearing the mask for 24 hours or however
Right.
many hours, but you have to calculate depending on the rules for each country, where you're going through, you know, how long your negative COVID test is valid for, and so there's all these rules. You have to jump through the hoops and coming
Well, and
back.
borders keep opening and closing.
Yeah.
And
Correct. So back then, we might have thought it was pretty cumbersome, but it might have actually been a little easier.
Oh yeah, now I look back and go, oh, it's so much easier back then.
Now, obviously, you guys are kids, though, so that's the
Yeah.
the factor that turns up the
Right.
volume a little bit because you guys
so
are
when we
kids.
ended up joining them, they were 2, 4, and 6.
Ooh.
Yeah, we moved them to Africa when they were 2, 4, and 6.
Yeah.
You know, I gotta say, it sounds pretty easy to me. I'm being facetious because it's like 2, 4, and 6. We moved our kids from. All right, now let's talk about the books for a second. We've got an author sitting here now. Where's the drum roll? Right. So the book thing now, you said it was on your heart back in the 90s, right?
Well, even my mother says I used to dictate little stories to her. I don't even remember that.
Wow.
And then I would handwrite, these stories in junior high. But I just set it aside. I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't important. It was a frivolous thing to do. There was more important things to do. But when we adopted our oldest, I said, I'm going to write a book, and I did, and I actually finished it. It was never published, but that was kind of the beginning, and I just loved it. And I did sell like devotionals and articles, and just was building things up, and then I eventually sold my first book, and I just
when was
have
this,
never,
like 2000-ish or something?
probably 2003 or so.
Okay. Now, how many books do you have total that are published?
I've been saying 40 for a while. So.
I think it's over 50.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know.
That's great. Now, I find it amazing. You guys know I love guitar, and I'm starting to write some songs, and I put it down for about a decade, so I'm back into it again. I love being back in the vineyard stuff because it's inspiring for that. But anywho, I always like talking to artistic people, whether they're musicians or authors and stuff, because a lot of musicians are guilty of, they have their whole life to make their first album. Right, so the first album can be eclectic, it can be really amazing sometimes, but then they get maybe a year between the first album and the second album, might be not quite as good, right? So their sophomore album. So, but I find authors to be a little different, because authors sometimes that have written a lot of books have had this like stuff either mulling in their heart for a long time, so they've got all different avenues that they approach. So you've got different storylines I've seen. So how do you come up with the storylines? Like, because this one I was looking at in our house the other day, I think it was like U.S. Marshals or something, and all that. And it's pretty neat. Like, how do you learn about all this stuff? Like, go ahead and riff on that for a few minutes. How do you come up with the storylines?
I think that's so funny, because my mother-in-law, she's like, where do you get all these stories? And I was like, I literally thought that everybody else has stuff in their head. And she was like, no, I just have a groceries list in my head. I just have so many stories in my head. I am never without ideas. Wow. I mean, I have like probably 4 series in there that I know exactly what I'm going to do. I mean, I may not have it all outlined, but I know the storylines, and so I don't know. They're always in my head.
So that's like a songwriter. So a songwriter will play. So really good songwriters, I'll pick on a classic songwriter. I don't like his singing, Bob Dylan, say just a songwriter. All your Jackson Browns. I'm into the old '70s stuff too. You know what I mean? So all these songwriters, and like it depends on what instrument they grab. If they got a different guitar or different style, they just start writing these different music because it's always been in them. It's just in them. Yeah. It's like you just throw something at them and they're like, oh shoot, let's just play this sound. This feels like I can play in the key of E minor, right? But you just start riffing off writing on stuff, and you just feel you're going down a certain avenue every time you start one of your series.
So to me, it's just a gift from God, and I just want to use it to glorify Him, because the stories just it's kind of therapy, I guess, for me to write them down. I mean, they're there. I got to do something with them. Yeah,
and so what types of themes for the listeners out there do you write about?
Mainly, well, they're all Christian fiction, and I would say kind of the overall thing is just God using ordinary people to do extraordinary things.
Nice.
Just people that have. I mean, a lot of times it is law enforcement, but a lot of times it's just people that end up having to face. I write suspense and thrillers, so obviously they're facing something that I don't want to face. I mean, they're facing something traumatic, and just how God uses them, and how God can bring good out of bad, and how we live in a fallen world. So there's going to be bad things that happen, and how these characters deal with that.
So are most of your books then, for the listeners out there, are they like a series like this? You might have a main character for 3 or 4 books that runs through a thread of books, or is like most of your books are just a one-off, original characters in every single book?
Most of I kind of have both. I have like my Nikki Boyd series, which was about missing persons. It's like 3 books, all the same main character.
I'm trying to think of the name.
Vendetta.
Okay.
No, and then the U.S. Marshal that you were talking about. It's 3 books, same characters. Okay. So it's each book is a case. And that wraps up, but then there's these overarching things like the murder of her husband, and then the romance with the person that she meets with another U.S. Marshal. I'm doing a series right now that's about a family in West Texas. The grid has gone down, and so it's kind of your law enforcement books, but it's set when you don't have any forensics. You can't do all those things. So it's kind of like the Old West. Well, I actually say it's like Longmire meets Jericho.
Ooh, I like Longmire.
Yeah. So that's been really fun because it's something different. And
so I gotta ask this. Let me pause right there for a second. What were some of the type of authors that influenced you, like growing up or high school, college? What type of books?
Well, growing up, I read a lot of like Victoria Holt, all these gothic romances, and I loved those. Nancy Drew when I was young, and all those kinds of things. Dee Henderson was one of the first Christian authors that I read, and I loved her books because, and I don't like romance novels because they just fight till the end, and then. Not all of them, I'm sure, but it always would irritate me, when they just fight to the end and then we have our happily ever after, and I'd be like, why can't they just like each other throughout the book and have some kind of, I don't know, it would just drive me crazy.
I'm with you on that. It's like a soap opera thing.
I know.
Can't take drama like that.
I didn't like it. So I read hers, and of course hers are suspense too, so the drama kind of comes from the suspense, but they actually like each other. And I was like, you mean I can do that? That's awesome.
Once again, this is parallel to musicians. So a music guy starts picking up guitar, starts playing something his dad kind of plays or his church kind of plays, and he's like, okay, I'm doing all right with this, but then he hears something else. He goes, I kind of like that. I can do that. So you're kind of like, you came across something, and you're like, this is possible. Okay, so what I'm thinking isn't crazy.
Yeah.
Somebody's actually doing this. I can do this.
Because I did start out writing mainly romance novels, Christian ones, but I would always kind of throw in the suspense line. But my books were always kind of off, readers, I think they were expecting a romance, and I just don't do that anymore.
She throws in a left
so mine are much more suspense, thriller.
That's really cool, man. That's really neat. So let me ask you some typical type questions. How long does it probably take to write, on average, a book once you get going?
I would probably like to have 6 months.
Okay.
Depending on the length of the book. I'm trying to get these books out, but they're a little bit shorter than my normal ones.
Okay.
Trying to get them out every 3 months. Sweet. We'll see what happens.
Wow,
yeah.
Now, has anybody ever approached you with trying to make one into any shows or productions?
Yeah, one time, it's been a long time. 21st Century Fox. But then they went into some kind of what is it when they just shut down? Anyway,
Chapter 11 or something?
No. But when they go on a strike, they went on strike or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember what happened, but there was some kind of strike.
What about audiobooks?
Yeah, I have audiobooks and a lot of them.
So how does that work on your end of it?
Well, I have a publisher, so they do all that.
They find people like the voice actors or something. I take it. I'm just guessing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I don't have to do any of that.
Wow, that's pretty neat. Now, where can listeners find all your stuff?
Pretty much anywhere you can buy books.
Any platform where books are sold, from Amazon to whatever.
I do some books on my own, and those are all on Amazon.
Okay.
And then the ones I do through my publisher are pretty much everywhere.
So do you have your own website, or do you stay away from that kind of stuff?
I do.
Okay, what's that right now?
LisaHarrisWrites.com.
Nice.
Yeah. So
how do you feel about all this, Scott? You read all the books, help give feedback? What do you do?
Yeah, I've read most of them. Everybody will go, have you read our books? I've read most of them.
He does. He
There's a
goes
few that
through
I
them
haven't.
to find, content issues or whatever.
Do you allow them some feedback when you're writing it? Do you give them?
Oh, I give it. She doesn't always follow it, but I give it.
No, and I'll always be like, okay, I got this problem you got to help me with. And so he'll help me think through things.
That's so cool.
Doesn't always, it helps her, but it doesn't.
Yeah, because sometimes he doesn't know what I'm talking about, but I'm like, thank you helped me anyway.
She'll go, well, I have the situation, but I don't know any of the characters. I don't know where they are. It's like, I can't help you. But just in her talking through that and trying to explain it, she goes, okay, I figured it out. And I go, so glad I could help.
He's very supportive, and he's my accountant.
Amen to that. I love it. Now, so where you're at now, you guys are in America. We're sitting in Tulsa. Yeah. Your mother's care, all that kind of stuff. You're going back to Africa soon, right? Yeah. And so let's talk about the future. What do you guys feel? What's God put on your heart right now, other than you're going back to Africa again, or what? You feel like
we are in a season. The seasons are changing, and we don't know what.
Yeah.
Not sure.
He actually went down to Houston. We have a board down there. Most of the board members are there, and he spent some time just praying and talking with some people about, just.
And part of it's because we're in a changing season of our ministry. Our ministry has always been to go and plant churches, develop leaders, plant churches, and then release them. Right. And COVID has accelerated that. Mm-hmm. The local leaders are doing everything, even on our registration for our ministry in Mozambique. Mm-hmm. I'm not even on the board of directors anymore. So they're the ones who have to give me the letters to renew my residency every year. So they've taken ownership. So right now I'm just really praying, what's my next season? How do I go back? Even this week when I go back, I don't want to step back in where they depend upon me. Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to be there to be a coach, a mentor, a teacher, advisor, someone that lifts them up and lets them continue to move forward in their leadership. Mm-hmm. And at some point I'm going to have to step out, because the intention is not to be there forever. It's to go and start something and leave. So when is that? I don't know. Do I feel like personally, do I feel like they're ready for me to step out and be gone? No. I don't feel like we have a broad enough base of leadership. Okay. I think it's a few individuals, but it needs to be a bigger base, to a better foundation. But how do I do that without making them go back? Because they'll want to be dependent upon me. I can be out of Zambia and out of Zimbabwe for a long time and step back and they'll go, here's all of our issues we've been waiting to ask you. Oh my goodness. No, you can take care of this yourself.
You want them to be autonomous.
Yeah. Yes. And while we've been gone, they've been forced to, rise up and start little house churches and in their neighborhoods. And
what type of government would you call it, Tommy? Is it like a militaristic? Do they have police officers or do they have military people? Because there's a difference.
We have both.
Mm-hmm.
We have both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen all sorts of third world countries. Like if you have the militant version of the police, it can be really scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as much as we have problems with police, this day and age, police are different than military.
Yeah.
It's on a different level. Different level than what we have here.
I mean, look at me. I was an M60 gunner. So, if I was the military force, I was trained to kill on our way through the objective, according to Geneva Conventions, But as soon as we went back across the objective, we're supposed to capture POW, all that stuff. And so that's a different tactic than police are supposed to do. So, these areas have police and military forces kind of.
Wait, and you have to realize Mozambique was a communist country before. And with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, then they became democratic. in quotes, I'm doing my air quotes here, democratic. So there are elections, but in Africa, there's the saying, it's like, it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts.
Oh, wow.
So
interesting. That's something, isn't it? Sitting here in America, we know America's not perfect, and we all get that. But if you ever get a chance, I'm encouraging listeners out there, if you get a chance to go live somewhere else and go not just visit somewhere else, but to go stay somewhere for a season, especially a third world country or something like that, underdeveloped nations. Whatever.
It changes your perspective.
But it changes everything from food to language to sports to music
and the idea of freedom.
Government.
I mean, freedom is in our DNA here in the U.S.
Correct.
But there, it doesn't matter. You think, well, I'm an American. That can't. Well, you're not in America, son.
Right.
And so it's not. It is really the authority, and it doesn't have to be the big authority. It is the authority you're in front of who has absolute authority.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
Even though it's all supposed to be democratic.
Every little area I've found, there's theology of place out there, right? And different theologies break out in different kind of area, different the way God moves in different kind of areas. But that stems also at a sub-level based on the type of people there and the personalities. So what type are they closed? Are they quiet? Are they open? What kind of...
They are more closed.
Are they? So when I was in Central America, if you say, "Come on, you're there for 10 minutes," they're telling you everything about themselves, and you don't even know. So that's not that kind of thing.
No, no, and I think it stems from we've often said, because we've lived in 3 different African countries, we've worked and ministered and moved in probably 20 different African countries over the years. But these Mozambicans are different.
Okay.
And I think it stems from the communist background.
Okay.
They also had, they broke with the Portuguese. There was the war for independence from the Portuguese. Then they had 15 years of civil war. The North to South, communist versus the Western supported fighters or whatever. And so there's that always going on. And there's still division between the North and the South today.
Wow. See, so
it's like, I think, they're not trusting, it's not like, they wouldn't walk up, hey, where are you from? Where did you come from? Other places in Africa, it's like that. Oh, you're a guest, you're obviously not from here, come into my house, eat my food. It's not like that.
It takes a while to get to know them and to become a part of their lives.
See, I find that interesting, depending on, so that's a whole different way of evangelizing and of teaching people, it is, because there's something called presuppositional apologetics, which I was kind of trained in, whatever, I'm using my air quotes, and Dr. Breckenridge, who I think he's retired now at ORU, I did my thesis and stuff under him and all that, and that was his main crux, is understanding what moves people, basically, in layman's terms, right? And you just laid it out there, kind of, so if somebody's to come visit, they kind of understand. You give them a little 5-minute speech on, okay, this is kind of where the background is, this is kind of how they act, this is why they kind of do it, right? It's not to be taken personal or take offense, it's just how they are, right?
Yeah.
So being out there, so if I was to come with you, do next week, whatever, we're going out there.
You probably wouldn't pick up in any of that, because it's you don't know what to expect.
Correct.
But coming from other places in Africa that are, Africans are generally very warm, welcoming, hospitable people, and these are much more reserved,
interesting,
quiet,
and then you
untrusting.
would be around the people that we know that now we have built a relationship with, so
so you'd be accepted automatically,
right? Gotcha.
Coming into the Christian community.
Gotcha.
But as far as just going into the village, no.
Now we got a couple minutes here, so let me ask you about the Christian environment down there. Is there any persecution that goes on? Is there any resistance to it? Talk about that for a minute.
Well, that's on several levels.
Right.
Okay. First of all, we targeted an unreached people group, which is defined in missiology as less than 2% evangelical Christian. Okay. So we were there, went in that under those parameters. Yet at the same time, in Nyumbani, where we live, it's where the Catholic Church went in over 500 years ago. They have 500 years of history in Nyumbani, in our city.
Wow.
And so you have that tradition brought from the Portuguese colonizers that came in. Then you also have the influence of Islam that's coming and spreading throughout Africa. In the north of the country, you have obviously many more Muslim-based tribes that would be considered Muslim. We're down in the south, so we don't have that as much, and yet there are mosques everywhere.
Wow.
So they are there. We have a mixed community. We have pretty much businesses are owned either by the Muslims or by the Indians, and there's a large Indian population. I say large, proportionally compared to the rest of expats that might live there. But these are multi-generational Indian families that probably came over and worked in South Africa, were brought over to South Africa originally and worked there, that settled in Mozambique. And so they have their community, and so we have a Hindu religious center there. I think that's the way it's marked, as religious center, community center. So you have that there. And yet, being Africa, most of our people are animistic, believing in the ancestors and in the spirit world. And so that is what we're dealing with. Our people are known for their witchcraft and being resistant to change.
Gotcha.
That's what the ethnographers would say.
But there is a basis, like if you were to talk to people about Bible, God, Jesus, Old Testament, they at least, there's something maybe.
There's a little bit there because the Catholics have been there for 500 years. But I can talk to people, and what I'll often do, they'll say, "Oh, I'm a Christian." I go, "Okay, that's great." And I'll say, "Well, who was Jesus?"
Yeah.
And someone will go, "I don't know." Or they'll say,
the word Christian means little Christ.
They'll say, he died for our sins.
Yeah.
And I'll go, "Well, what does that mean? How does he die for our sins?" "Oh, I don't know."
Right.
I can be with people who are members, quotes again, members of a church, maybe even second generation, third generation Christians that go back a long time. The Methodists had a base across the bay from us for 100 years.
Wow.
So we have some long-term people there that have a religious background, but they've never even heard the story of Noah.
Right. Interesting.
We're talking like basic.
It's been kind of shocking.
Yeah.
So they didn't watch VeggieTales, right?
No VeggieTales.
So, and I say that lightheartedly, but meaning the truth is that you're kind of going into an area that maybe some people assume they're Christians, but you would look at them and say, well, let's just start over.
If you went through town, you might say, "Oh, look, of course, the biggest building, one of the biggest buildings in our town is the cathedral, the Catholic cathedral there."
Interesting.
The church. And so it's like, that's the biggest building. It's right on the bay. You can see it from across the bay, over from the sister city in Mashish. So you can see that.
Right.
Scott was teaching on the 10 Commandments, and I just remember being so shocked because they would come forward at the end of the service and they were like, maybe it was do not lie. They were like, "We didn't know. We didn't know."
I mean,
and
everybody would come forward and say, kneel down and say, "Let me
How do you know
pray."
that? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it was
We've never heard this before.
Boy, I know my Catholic side of me comes, "What? Confession time. So, come on, let's confess some sins and get right, but no, I mean, the reality is you're dealing with a different structure of population than what we're used to here in America.
Oh yeah.
Well, and the majority of the people that we work with are illiterate. So it's not like they can pick up the Bible and read themselves. Now, the younger people, yes, the educated people can, but it'll be in Portuguese. It's not going to be in their mother tongue. So if you're from the villages and you only speak your mother tongue and maybe a little bit of Portuguese because you never went to school, I mean, you're not going to get it any other way.
Let me ask you this. The illiterate people in the population that's illiterate and you're trying to say witness to them or something, does worship, singing songs help at all? Because in the Western world, even years ago, right, during medieval times and stuff like that, even, singing, right? Singing, and then the churches, the way they looked with the stained glass and stuff, always taught people, aspects of God. So I'm wondering, even now in modern days, would singing be a legit way to kind of get some of them to understand, because they can maybe start singing about Jesus or something? Is that true or no? Not quite.
One of the things you want to, as a movement grows, you want them to start writing their own songs and developing their own stories and stuff. So that gets to a point where that can happen sometimes.
Nice.
But I know, like, when we have our English camp, it's one of our major outreaches because kids want to learn English.
Right.
So we offer a free English Bible camp during their winter break, during our summer break. And so we have this camp, and that's where many of my disciples have come from.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we start and we go through from creation through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, telling God's story.
Cool.
And we do activities, and we do those all in dramas and act them out and do small groups. But the other aspect is we bring in a worship leader from Brazil. It's a friend of mine, a pastor there. And he can do English and in Portuguese. So we choose, most of the songs are where we can have the English words and the Portuguese songs, because we're doing the English to attract them. But worship, we give them an experience of what real worship is.
Nice.
And a lot of times they're there worshiping and experiencing God and feeling the movement of God before they're even heard the whole gospel message. And it's an integral part of our English camp. I mean, without it, cool. One year he couldn't come. There was something that happened, and we had to bring somebody else in who didn't know the Portuguese side, and so we just tried to do it in English. Even though she could lead good in English, it just didn't have the same effect because they don't have the
reach people where they're at. They don't have the.
It doesn't speak their heart language. You get the music, So
right. That makes sense, because God got a hold of me during worship. So at Bronzeville Revival and stuff years ago, and everything came around, and it was literally on the floor of the big convention center. We were just hanging out with the youth kids, and it was worship that got to me. And I started listening to Vineyard stuff, and I was already a guitar guy, hobbyist guitarist and stuff. So it was like worship just like got in me, man. And I was just, whew. So I know it's not everybody's experience. Some people hear preaching and without music and stuff, then it gets to whatever. God reaches people different ways. But I was wondering with those people if they respond really well to worship. Never know. You know what I mean? Some people in their different cultures love, down Latino cultures, they love the music, man. And Vineyard,
we love to sing and dance.
Latin.
You can't have a
get together
non-movement
without something
oriented worship
be
service.
Just sitting. Yeah.
No.
I love it. So they move around during their worship and stuff.
Oh yeah.
They're very active.
Yeah.
Very active and participatory.
So if you gave them flags or something, would they wave flags around or something like that?
Oh yeah, probably.
That's cool.
But a lot of times in the churches, it's just part of their culture when they know what to do. I don't feel comfortable doing it just because I can't dance.
Right.
I don't want to look stupid. But they'll come up, and the ladies will come up and they'll dance up around the stage and everything, and then go back, and then it's the men's turn, and it's it's young and old, and it's it's just very wonderful.
Now, if people listening want to pray for you guys, I can hear some needs popping up and all that kind of stuff, what would be a couple key points to pray for?
I think first of all is for wisdom and discernment as I go back and try to oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the microphone. Try to understand my role as it's changing and has changed, to know how to best serve them.
Right.
And so just for wisdom and discernment in that.
Right.
And I think another thing is just because Lisa is based here now, and we end up going back and forth. I come back in May, and I'll be here for a month and then go back again. Just for our family and our marriage, just to be strong. We know this is a season, and everybody goes through seasons. And so this is a season. We don't know how long the season is going to be, but just for God's blessing during that time.
Protection.
Yeah.
Blessing. I know, it's parallel. I'm thinking of right now, I'm a veteran. My wife's a veteran. I was at ORU, and she got called up for war.
Deployment,
in the reserves,
probably.
And she ended up not having to go to Afghanistan or anything like that. She ended up staying in San Antonio, but still she was away from us, and she was down there active and running a cardiac care unit or whatever. She was, yeah. So
this is our time of deployment.
Yeah, you guys remind me of that with my veteran community. Kind of, you're a Christian war soldiers, right?
Amen.
And isn't that what we're supposed to be?
Right, exactly.
I actually just saw this meme. It was like the church church is not supposed to be like a cruise ship or like a battleship, you know. And I thought,
man, I might have to steal that one. Is that on a shirt at Mardell's?
No, it was on Facebook.
I saw that. I think I saw that shirt right above your book.
Yeah. But it is a powerful reminder, you know. Yeah.
And then as we're wrapping up here, how can people can they give one-time gifts to this type of thing? What's the ministry then?
It's
they can give to?
African Outreach Ministries. It's www.africanoutreachministries.org.
Okay.
And you'll see our picture on there and everything, and then there's a give button at the bottom.
Nice.
So
and some neat stories, actually.
Yeah, some videos.
Some video testimony stories of people that we're working with that are pretty powerful.
That's pretty cool, man. I love it. So we know I'll put stuff in the show notes about the books, about the ministry stuff like that, anything, you know. And
there's a couple other links on YouTube. Some guys came over a couple years ago and did some promotional videos. I don't know that those are linked onto our website or not.
They are.
Well, you can have to find out. Do some
but we'll put those on. Yeah. Particularly, there's one testimony that makes me cry every time.
Really?
Of Amelia. She can't walk.
Right.
She scoots to church. And when I'm not there to pick her up, I'll go and pick her up, and we lift her up into the car and then transport her. But otherwise, she will scoot on the ground to church. And her testimony, we have it. She's speaking in the local dialect, and we have it dubbed over. But it's extremely powerful.
Wow.
The part that gets me at the end, the part that gets me at the end, she says, you don't see it by looking at me, but on the inside I'm dancing.
Oh wow, that's sweet.
And I know one day I'll dance with Jesus.
Amen to that.
And it's like this is a woman who has nothing. Her world is probably in feet would probably be say 100, if it's 100 feet circumference of a circle.
Yeah.
That would be her whole world.
Wow.
And extremely poor, and yet loves the Lord. And she says, Scott, I can't go out and evangelize because I can't go anywhere. But she goes, I can stay here and pray.
Amen.
And I say, you just keep on praying.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'll put those links on there.
I will. I'll put it all in the show notes. And what I always want to say at the end of every show is that, that we recognize that we're blessed to be a blessing. I think you guys even kind of know that already, right? So everybody listening out there, I just want to encourage everybody to think about what's being said today, and if you feel that God's put on your heart to give to the ministry or to reach out to anybody here on the show, you can always reach out to me here and I can pass messages along. If you guys have anything they can reach out to, if somebody who's interested in asking any questions.
Still the website.
The website.
There's an info or a button they can.
Okay. Do you have a Facebook page for your books and stuff like that?
Yeah. And for the ministry too.
And for the ministry too? Okay, cool. All right. Because sometimes people like to message sometimes on Facebook.
Right,
or even,
right.
Okay, cool. So anybody out there listening, if you got questions, feel free to just submit them. Do you guys want to say a shout out to anybody out there? Just anybody, kids or anything, in case they get to listen?
No, I haven't thought about that.
I love it. All right, well.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Hang on the line here as we finish up. Just hang out for a second. But I want to thank you guys for coming on the show today. And look forward to hearing some more good stuff when you come back to church and stuff. And come back and visit in America. Because technically you're not really here, right?
I'm not really here.
You're not really here. But I am looking at him like, folks, he's right here. I can touch him.
Yeah. Ouch.
But, all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We appreciate it. And I look forward to some more testimonies from you guys. Thanks.
Amen.
Hey everyone, Sean McKinnon here. Thanks for listening. As always, we hope you've been enjoying the podcast. Here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us.